How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
My man. You got everybody marching to the beat of your drum, including me, and I'm true buying it.
Hey,
this ain't
there
no
it
bank
is.
robbery.
Wow. We were just talking, me and Todd were just talking about that movie. Or I was talking about that movie to Todd.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Inside Man.
What's that? Todd has a movie called Inside Man he was in.
I know that one's
there it is.
Is that one still out there on the internet somewhere?
Well, hello, and welcome to Cinema Shock. It's the podcast exploring the stories behind your favorite cult and genre films. We do all the research so that you don't have to. This is the last podcast you'll ever need about virtuosity. I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horn.
Hey, I'm your other host, Justin Bishop.
And I'm writer-comedian Mr. Todd A. Davis. Thank you for joining us for our second look at the cyber thrillers of 1995 in our series titled Virtual Insanity.
We only do two-parters for bangers, though, by the way. So it's just because these movies are so huge, they need two parts.
Yeah,
If it
Johnny
was like-
Mnemonic and Virtuosity.
If it was 2001: A Space Odyssey, one episode, max.
One episode, that's all it gets. That's all it's worth. Anyway, before we talk about all that, I want to give a shout out to our Cinema Shock Plus subscribers. We have a new subscriber to thank this week. It is Hunter D. McKenzie,
Yeah.
who just joined this week at the Johnny's Keys tier. The Johnny's Keys tier is the $5 tier. That's the most popular one. That gets you access to all the extended versions of these episodes. They're on cinemashock.net/plus. The tier above that, which is the Be Excellent tier, is $10 a month and gets you the video. That's for like the hardcore fans, you know, that want to see our dumb faces and see us mess up all the time and flub. And you get all the bloopers on that one, really, is what you get.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's the one where you get all the bloopers. But Johnny's Keys is the one where you get like the actual content that we feel like is worth, you know, getting out there. And they're actually like edited episodes. They're edited to sound good. Whereas the video is like raw and it's like a behind the scenes look at what we do, which is kind of neat, you know, for hardcore fans.
Yeah.
But Hunter joined at Johnny's Keys. So Hunter is going to get those extended episodes, which is going to have further viewing for this episode and the next episode. We got further viewing for both of these movies. We've got, I think, well, no, I don't know if we have further viewing for both of these movies, but we do have some Star Trek stuff for both movies. I think we have some Somebody Needs a Nap where Gary reads internet reviews of the movies, I think, for both of these movies. So there's a lot of bonus content on those episodes. It's good shit, honestly.
Welcome to the party, Hunter. I was just telling my wife the other day that Hunter D. McKenzie is one of the most upstanding people I've ever known.
you were just telling your wife that, huh?
Yeah, I was just telling her that. And here we are with Hunter. That D stands for damn fine human being, is what it stands for.
Does.
Or Darnell. I don't know.
Or-
It's probably
or-
one of the.
I mean, it could
One of
be.
It could be anything.
Denzel. Maybe it's Denzel. And this
Uh-oh.
is like super
Oh.
appropriate.
Wow,
Hunter Denzel.
Have you ever met another Denzel or even known of another Denzel?
There's few people
think
that
so.
there's few people that can go by their first name and you know exactly who they're talking about. Denzel.
Yeah, the only other Denzel I know is Denzel Curry, the rapper. I'm assuming that's his real name, but I bet he was named after Denzel Washington because Denzel Curry
Probably.
was born in like 95. He was born the year this movie came out. so I bet his mom got pregnant during Virtuosity, and
Yeah, they
That's
saw,
it. That's
They
it.
saw this movie and they were like, "That's
9
well,
months.
my
9
God."
Mom,
months later.
whoever she was with at the time, they saw that scene with Sid and Sheila, and it started stuff going in the theater.
Oh wow. Well, anyway, we got off. What were we talking about? We were talking about.
We
Cinema
got
Shock.
off. I don't know. That's what you
Thanks,
said.
Hunter.
Anyway, yes, thank you, Hunter. Thank you for all of our members of Cinema Shock Plus because you help us make this show. You help us fund all the research we do and the podcast hosting and all that stuff. We very, very much appreciate it. We say it every episode how much we appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you. If you want to join Cinema Shock Plus and get all that bonus content we were just talking about, head to cinemashock.net/plus. You can join that today, and you can join for free. You don't get all the bonus stuff, but you will get, occasional announcements and things like that won't show up anywhere except for on Cinema Shock Plus or maybe on our Substack. And that's all I got to say. That's the plug. Today, we are continuing our journey through the virtual worlds of mid-90s sci-fi cinema with a look at a real oddity. This is a movie that was kind of conceived as a blockbuster, an FX-filled action movie with two of the world's biggest movie stars as its leads. And yet, of all the movies that we're talking about during this series, I feel like this one's the least known. And the movie itself, it's kind of largely been forgotten over the years. I feel like, at least, you guys had never seen it, right?
True.
You guys had never seen it.
I remember it happening, and I remember being aware of it.
You remember its existence.
Yeah, I just never saw it. And it's weird. I don't know why exactly.
Well, it feels like for a lot of people who do remember it, they mostly remember it as a weird footnote in the careers of its stars. Like, hey, remember this? That kind of thing. But yes, today we are talking about Brett Leonard's 1995 sci-fi action film, Virtuosity.
In this high-tech crime prevention facility, one man has been recruited to play a simulated game. The objective, to hunt down the ultimate virtual reality killer, Sid 6.7. There's only one problem. The computer changed the program. Now, he's in the real world.
He's interactive. On your knees, now! He doesn't enjoy the game unless he's playing against his favorite opponent, and that's me.
From the director of Lawnmower Man.
He's recreating mass murders.
So you're saying Sid's a copycat?
Sid 6.7 is intent on improving the original.
Denzel Washington.
Just because I'm carrying around the joy of killing your family inside me doesn't mean we can't be friends.
Virtuosity.
Game over.
I thought Johnny Depp was in this movie right up until I got the DVD.
I think you're thinking of something else.
I
Maybe
think so.
Transcendence. That was what other sci-fi movies is he in? Astronaut's Wife. That would be a hard one to
I'm
confuse
say
with this.
Johnny Depp does a lot of like sci-fi. Like
Those are the only ones I can
sci-fi.
think of. Astronaut's Wife and Transcendence.
All right.
Well, guess Gary's an idiot.
The safe bet.
It's not new. I realize that nothing we've been doing is new. We haven't been tapping into new areas of cinematic analysis. We've just been spoiling movies. This podcast is simply a route to knowledge that fanboys and film nerds used decades ago. The human race lost that knowledge, and now we're reclaiming it through our series about virtual reality movies. So, if you haven't watched the movies that we're talking about today, you should probably go do that before you listen to this.
That's a spoiler alert.
Yeah, that was the spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I stepped on it, Todd, and I apologize. I forgot that you do that right after the trailer, and I just jumped in talking about my bullshit.
Every episode for 4 years, Gary.
Yeah.
Get your shit together.
Instead of a spoiler alert, it just sounded like you were a weirdo. Just that's just how you do conversation.
That's just how you
every
talk.
Episode for 4 years, Gary. I'm a weirdo.
Almost 5 years, buddy. Almost
That's
5 years.
true.
We're
God,
coming
we're
up
right
on
around the
5
corner.
years. All right, real quick little disclaimer here. We are doing Virtuosity. That's the main focus of this because it came out in 1995. That's when all these movies came out that we're talking about. We're doing the cyber thrillers of 1995, as Todd said earlier.
That's right.
But a lot of this first part of our Virtuosity behind the scenes journey is going to be discussing Brett Leonard's previous movie, The Lawnmower Man, because it's a big part of Virtuosity's story, honestly. Well, Brett Leonard's background, as you'll find out as we talk about it, really leads a lot into The Lawnmower Man, which then, of course, leads into Virtuosity. So it almost felt like you couldn't talk about one without talking about the other in depth. So we're not going to go as in depth on Lawnmower Man as we do on every movie that we cover, but we're going to talk about it a good bit. And there might be some light spoilers for Lawnmower Man. I don't think we'll get into real heavy spoilers, but just be warned. If you haven't seen Lawnmower Man, there might be some light spoilers in there.
I'm trying to make lawnmower noises.
I was going to
Is that
say,
what that was?
Gary, a master of sound effects.
Wow. Wow, I thought somebody was mowing the grass behind me, actually, out this window here. I thought my neighbor had fired it up, but no, that was just Gary's voice. Wow.
Yeah.
If they ever remake the Police Academy movies.
Right, Michael Winslow, fucking done.
He's retired. You're taking over, Gary. Congratulations.
Wow.
All right. So before we get into all of this, let's talk a little bit about the guy who directed Virtuosity, Brett Leonard. Now, Leonard is not a household name, and the movies that we're talking about today are by far the biggest projects that he's been a part of. His career as a director has been pretty, interesting. He's directed everything from music videos to 3D IMAX films to a made-for-TV Highlander movie and a Siegfried and Roy biopic starring Siegfried and Roy. But he's also spent a lot of his career focused on the convergence of film and technology, an obsession that he's worked into his movies almost from the beginning.
You know, from that description alone, you would think that this guy would be like shoulder to shoulder with Jimmy Cameron, doing that sort of thing, integrating like cutting edge technology into films and stuff like that. But this has been largely forgotten.
Yeah.
And the paths diverged. And here we are.
But he almost, I felt the same way, like when I was researching his background and stuff, that he is very similar to James Cameron in that way, where he's kind of obsessed with the latest, greatest technology. But I think the big difference is that James Cameron is highly focused on technology, on filmmaking technology specifically, whereas Leonard is obsessed sort of with technology in general, and then he'll take technology that's not necessarily created for film and sort of try to integrate it into filmmaking, if that makes sense. Does that make sense how I'm explaining that? Whereas Jim Cameron is like, oh, what's the next big thing in filmmaking tech? It's digital film, it's 3D, it's this and this and that. Whereas Leonard is like, virtual reality was not created for filmmaking, but then he tries to integrate it into filmmaking.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they both are interested in the tech, and their paths would intersect eventually, like on where they would end up. Yeah, just starting in different areas, I guess.
Yeah. So growing up in Toledo, Ohio, Leonard had aspired to work in movies for most of his life, ever since he first saw Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey at the age of 7, a film that also spawned his obsession with science fiction and technology. And as soon as Leonard graduated high school, he booked it across the country to California, hoping to break into the movie biz.
Always have to take a moment and say how much I appreciate that about some of these people that just drop fucking everything and just go with no plans, no skills, no nothing.
Just going. The desire and the dream. Toledo, Ohio to California is obviously a huge distance, and to go without, like, he wasn't accepted into film school. He didn't, I didn't really read anything about him even making a bunch of like backyard movies and stuff in his childhood, like we often hear about. Now, maybe he did. And his background is not as well documented as like James Cameron or Steven Spielberg. So it's possible that information is just not out there for me to find. But it feels like he's just like, man, I love movies. I want to make movies. They make movies in California. First step to making movies, let's go to California.
Yeah.
So that's what he did. And like I said, he didn't go to film school. He didn't have any connections in Hollywood. So Leonard started at the very bottom of the Hollywood ladder, beginning his career as a grip and then working his way up by writing screenplays and doing second unit camera work and second unit direction on low budget films that were filming in the area of Northern California where he was living.
I will say that as I've gotten into different casts, because I'm the finding everybody in Star Trek, but I end up reading through so many of these IMDb pages and all these CVs and resumes and stuff like that. That's largely how you do it. Everybody has you got to start somewhere on their resume. And it's an assistant to, or a grip, or a driver, or doing something. And for folks who think they're going to start at the top, no.
I mean, James Cameron started out in the art department on Roger Corman movies.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned Northern California. I specified Northern California, and that geographic location is kind of integral to Leonard's story. While Northern California wasn't an epicenter of filmmaking business like Hollywood was, it was an area where a lot of technical innovation was happening. George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic was housed in San Francisco, which is just 70 miles north of Santa Cruz, which is where Leonard was based. But what's really notable about the location is that it puts Leonard in proximity to Silicon Valley, which is the global center for technology and innovation, especially during this time, like back in the 80s and 90s. And Leonard found himself in the middle of the digital revolution that was happening in the 1980s, falling in with folks like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, as well as a guy named Jaron Lanier. So Jaron Lanier is a highly fascinating person. Like if you start reading about this guy, like he is incredibly fascinating. He's a computer scientist. He is largely considered a founder in the world of virtual reality, like an absolute genius, this guy. He had begun his career as a video game designer, which led to him working for Atari for several years. This is like in the early days of Atari. And then in 1985, him and his colleague, a guy named Thomas G. Zimmerman, they left Atari to found their own company called BPL Research, which became the first company to sell VR goggles and wired gloves.
That guy was inventing the metaverse before Zuckerberg was out of diapers.
Yeah.
He made VR look sexy and terrifying. Some of the ways he described it, it almost sounds like he was even predicting like Twitter. Before Twitter was a thing. But just, by the way, if you haven't seen him, he looks like if Bob Ross joined a reggae band.
And Thomas G. Zimmerman, he had actually invented like the goggles and the gloves that are used in VR. So the two of them kind of combined forces to create this company.
It literally coined the term virtual reality. He's like a living issue of Wired magazine or something. But I was looking at an interview with Leonard where he talked about being at an event called Cyberthon, and it was like a 24-hour event where they you just preview tech all day long. I had a quote from him here. He says, he introduced me to the technology very early at the Cyberthon event. Everyone stays up for 24 hours and checks out all the new tech. The idea came to me when I actually put on a headset that Jaron put on my head, and I believe this was in 1989. I just instantly said, oh my God, I've got to make a movie about this. The other mind-bending thing to me about all of this still is just imagining Brett, Leonard, Steve Jobs, and Jaron Lanier at like a Northern California party in the late 80s high on
just
like laser discs and
cocaine.
Cocaine, probably. None of them thinking about Apple being one of the biggest companies in the world at some point or anything. Jaron Lanier looking like a wizard who hacked the Matrix. Brett Leonard's just like sitting there taking notes at the bonfire or something. They're just like, it's like a cult of digital weirdos who are just like code and LSD.
But these guys are like changing the world, like literally changing the world. And Jaron Lanier is one of those guys who's like, he is an absolute, what you would call a futurist, like somebody who can like accurately, like you were saying, like he was predicting things like the metaverse and Twitter before that was even a twinkle in Zuckerberg's eye. I mean, that's what a true futurist is. And that's a gift that not a lot of people have. I mean, we've talked about, we called James Cameron a futurist when we were talking about that. And he is in a way, but not in the way that like this guy is. Like this guy is like, I mean, he's a genius. So these are the types of folks that Brett Leonard's hanging out with. He's like going to parties with these guys. He's hanging out. He's hearing them talk about all this insane, innovative tech that they're working on, stuff that sounded like it came right out of something like 2001: A Space Odyssey. And he was hoping that he would be able to combine this type of tech with the types of films that he wanted to make.
So when he later goes on to make Virtuosity, it's not just like he was like, oh, this is a cool idea. It's the final form of a guy who spent a decade dreaming about how to film digital evil.
Yeah.
And even gave it a name, and that name was Russell Crowe.
But in the meantime, early in his career, he continued working odd jobs on movies, including, I shit you not, I could not believe this when I found this information. He was a performer in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, where he played Jumbo the Clown.
Wow.
He played he was one of the killer clowns.
Yeah, the future godfather of cyber cinema started his whole journey inside of a giant foam suit playing Jumbo. And he's the biggest clown, for those of you who don't remember. He's the one who like punches the biker's head clear off his body.
He's the tall one with like the tuft of, he's got like the Krusty the Clown kind of haircut where it's like hair on the sides and the tuft of hair on the top.
They mentioned it to him in like a Fangoria issue. I saw like a clip from, they asked him about it. He was like, yep, that's how I got my start.
That's
Old
crazy.
Latex and red lipstick.
Whatever you got to do to get your comically oversized foot in the door.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah. You gotta appreciate, just take a second to just realize that the guy who digitized Russell Crowe's murder boulder started out as a clown punching punching heads off. That's a legendary career arc.
He probably was like taking notes on like directing and stuff. I mean, he had already worked as a second unit director and things like that. But yeah, he's probably he's taken more notes from the Chiodo brothers on special effects and things like that. It's probably really hard to write notes when he was wearing those big clown hands, but
the big goofy hands.
So a year after making that classic, and I do not say that sarcastically, I love Killer Clowns from Outer Space. In fact, I bought a new copy of Hackers because we're going to be talking about that during the series. And when I ordered it from Shout Factory, I also ordered myself a 4K of Killer Clowns from Outer Space as a treat.
As a treat.
As a treat. So a year after making that classic, in 1989, Leonard wrote, directed, and edited his first feature film, a low-budget horror movie called The Dead Pit. Have you seen The Dead Pit?
No, I've not seen it. I know it's a zombie movie.
Yes, it seems like it's sort of like he refers to it as a zombie movie, but the plot, I mean, the undead are involved. I'm not sure that it's quite zombies from what I've seen. I haven't seen it. I watched the trailer, though, when I was researching this, and it looks really fun. Honestly, like I really want to see it now. It's not streaming anywhere, so I might just have to track down a Blu-ray.
He seems pretty proud of it. I mean, I just saw it. The only reason I knew the zombie thing was I had seen interviews with him where he calls it that and just talks about how so many of us got our start in zombie movies.
Yeah.
And just seem to be really proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, it looks fun. So I read a couple reviews of it and people seem to like it, but I have not seen it. But the movie got him the attention of producers at a company called Allied Vision. And these folks had purchased the rights to another of Leonard's screenplays. Well, they purchased after meeting him, they purchased the rights to another of his screenplays, a virtual reality themed story called Cyber God. Cool title. Yeah. It was co-written with Jimmel Everett and inspired by a presentation given by Jaron Lanier on his research into virtual reality. That was probably what was it called? Cyberthon or something you were talking about? I imagine it was at something like that. Yeah. Now, this wasn't an easy sell. These producers had hired this guy who had written and directed a low-budget horror movie, a zombie movie, probably hoping that he would do the same for them. Like you hired George Romero to do another zombie movie.
Right.
But then he comes in with this high-concept science fiction story about something called virtual reality, and they didn't know what the hell virtual reality was because nobody knew what the hell virtual reality was in like 1989. So Leonard used his own money to create a 20-minute educational video. And I wish that this was digitized and like on YouTube somewhere because I would like to see it. But he created this he called it an educational video, but it was basically a video where he has to explain the concept of virtual reality to these producers. And somehow this worked. And it led to them buying the screenplay, of course, with the thinking that Leonard would have directed himself.
He said it was like teaching kindergartners. Like they just have no concept of what this even is completely. So he's making like a DIY TED Talk meets Tron or something.
I mean, that's a hard thing to explain. Like, think about that. Like, if you have no concept of what virtual reality is, because we've had a concept of virtual reality for most of our lives. And I mean, we watched VR Troopers when we were kids, right?
That's true.
I know I did.
Yeah.
But like, if you have no concept of what virtual reality is, how in the world do you explain that to somebody? Like a world inside of a computer? You sound like a psychopath.
No, it sounded like if you see him in interviews talk about it, it was just like he's got like a 1990s PowerPoint going on, and it's like literal. I think one of his literal quotes was like there was a slide for like, imagine if reality could be reprogrammed like software. He's explaining like VR to 90s studio executives, like how you'd have to try to explain OnlyFans to an Amish person. I don't know.
Right.
Somehow. But they bought it somehow.
Yeah. So at the same time, Allied Vision also happened to own the rights to a 7-page Stephen King short story called The Lawnmower Man that they were hoping to get made, wanting to capitalize on the success of the recent It miniseries. So that miniseries had come out in early 1990, and it was a huge hit, and it kind of made Stephen King's name hot again. Like Stephen King always seems to go through these like phases where like there's a big Stephen King thing that comes out, it's really popular, and then everyone wants to hop on the Stephen King train, and then a couple of shitty ones get made, and then it drops off, and it comes back a couple years later. It's just it's the cycle of being a Stephen King fan. So that every few years you get one really good movie and then a bunch of really shitty ones. So though we had a pretty good streak there for a while after It.
I thought he was pretty hot for a while there, leading right up into like the Pet Sematary remake.
Which is bad. Yeah. And that fucking Salem's Lot remake, which is atrocious. Like it should not exist. I'm upset that it exists. Anyway, this Stephen King story, The Lawnmower Man, it had taken quite a journey to get into Allied's hands. First published in May of 1975 in an issue of Cavalier magazine. It was later included in King's 1978 short story collection, Night Shift. Now, that same year, this newly formed company called Sword and Sorcery Productions optioned 6 of the 20 stories in Night Shift with the intent of making horror anthology films using King's story as a basis. So they were going to use all these various stories to create like multiple anthology movies, basically. And one of those anthologies would have had a theme of machines turning against man and would have included The Lawnmower Man, The Mangler, and Trucks, all of which have been made into movies at this point. Now, nothing ever became of this project. And in 1984, Dino De Laurentiis purchased the rights to those 3 stories. I feel like we should have a drinking game on here where you take a shot every time that Dino De Laurentiis is somehow involved in the story of a movie.
Yeah.
Not if you want the show to be coherent.
like it is.
Who's to say we haven't been?
I feel like every other movie we talk about, his name comes up somehow, except during maybe this Jim Henson series. But outside of that, I bet there's a 6 degrees of Jim Henson even that you could somehow connect Dino De Laurentiis.
There for sure is. Missed opportunity, though.
Yeah.
Just getting those 2 together.
But Dino purchased the rights to these stories, the 3 that I just mentioned, also intending to turn them into an anthology film like Cat's Eye, which is another horror anthology film that he was producing based on King's short stories. Now, later on, it was decided that it'd be better to turn each of these stories into a full-length feature film, beginning with Trucks, which was turned into King's ill-fated directorial debut, Maximum Overdrive, a movie that we 100% will be covering at some point on this show. I don't know when, but we've got to. I mean, we've got to. We should do like a one-hit wonders series like we did on the old show.
That'd be cool.
About, like,
yeah.
a director who only did like one movie. Plus, it'd give me a chance to do Night of the Hunter again.
That's a fun movie.
I love that movie. Anyway, none of the other projects happened under Dino De Laurentiis' watchful eye, possibly because Maximum Overdrive turned out to be such an extreme clusterfuck. I don't know if you know the story of that movie, but Stephen King, he was doing so much cocaine that he does not remember making it.
That's like me in every episode of this show.
But he has said that in like multiple interviews. He does not remember making Maximum Overdrive. He's got books he doesn't remember writing during that time.
Wow.
Like good books. Like he wrote good books while he was either like very drunk or very high on cocaine. But, you know, it's the 80s, man.
Yeah.
Right? That's all you can say. But eventually, Dino De Laurentiis' rights to the stories lapsed, probably due to one of the many financial tumbles that his companies took. That's always something you have to talk about with Dino De Laurentiis is that, well, this ended up not happening because he filed for bankruptcy again.
Yeah, which is an easy thing to knock somebody on, but then if they keep coming back, it's like, hey, all right, you got a skill I don't have.
Yeah, he keeps getting back up. Right. By the late 1980s, the rights to The Lawnmower Man had made their way to Allied Vision, but they kind of struggled to expand King's story, which is a very slight story, into a feature-length film. Have you guys ever read The Lawnmower Man?
For this, I was curious.
You read it for this? So it doesn't resemble it at all. Other than
there's a lawnmower.
There's a lawnmower, and it's basically like the main character, who is like mentally handicapped, I guess you'd say, in the story, can control lawnmowers telepathically. And it's been a while since I've read it, but I believe that he gets his powers from like the god Pan or somebody like that. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like a guy hires a lawn guy. Lawn guy's actually like a centaur thing that I forget the name of the actual like creature who worships Pan and eats grass naked. And
yeah, it's a weird story.
There's no VR, no computers.
No,
just weed whacking and Satan.
So what it has in common is that there's a lawnmower man.
Right.
That's kind of it. So someone at this company at Allied had this really bright idea, right? They're like, we're going to combine elements of Brett Leonard's CyberGod screenplay with elements of King's story while still using the title The Lawnmower Man because we want to capitalize on King's name because it's hot right now.
All of this stuff has kind of happened concurrently. Like they wanted him for Lawnmower Man, and they had the initial concept that was kind of a local gardener who was evil, who was using a mulching machine to chop up women and make them into fertilizer. And he basically was like, I don't really like that, but I do got this other thing. And he said, they're like, what the fuck? Literally. They were like, what the fuck is that? But basically, somehow along the way, yeah, he takes Lawnmower Man, and the studio just agrees, I guess, brilliantly or greedy or whatever it is. They're just like, what if we just smash all this together and pray Stephen King's cocaine habit's still intact?
Yeah. Let's just smush these together. But it's really more like CyberGod with a spring sprinkling of the Lawnmower Man. Is really, it's like a seasoning.
Right.
There's just it's just a little Stephen King seasoning on top. You know, like
Yeah.
that's really all it is. And so in the summer of 1991, Leonard gathered a cast that included Pierce Brosnan, pretty early in his career. This is a few years before GoldenEye, because GoldenEye was what, 94, I think? I guess he'd already done Remington Steele at this point, so he was known. And Jeff Fahey, great character actor Jeff Fahey, who, I mean, who's not a fan of that guy? If you're a fan of Lost, he's Lapidus on there. He's in he's in a bunch of like Robert Rodriguez movies. He's in Planet Terror and Machete, and
He was in one of the Darkman sequels.
He is, yeah. And great character actor.
Yeah.
Creepy eyes.
Very.
There's something about his eyes that are very creepy, very unnerving. But they filmed The Lawnmower Man in Los Angeles on a budget of about $10 million.
I don't know what's up with Jeff Fahey's look. Every time I saw him watching The Lawnmower Man, I was just like, goodbye, Mama. Now you can have ice cream in heaven. I'll see you tonight in my head movies. Only this head movie makes my eyes rain. I don't know if I can do that.
I don't
Is
know.
that okay to do?
I think. Well, that was just a Jeff Fahey impression. What are you talking about? Of course, you're allowed to do that.
No, but it was like you have to think Tropic Thunder had seen the Lawnmower Man or something.
Right.
Like they were, the balls on Leonard, besides just we already talked about, he moved across the country or whatever, just to become a movie guy. Somehow he's worked his way this far and he's doing this. So he gets brought into a studio, and then the studio's like, we want you to do this movie. And then he's like, I don't know. I kind of rather do this other thing. And they're like, okay, well, maybe we'll do that. I don't know how he's like willing these things into existence.
Yeah, he convinced them.
And he even says that like the only lingering concern they had when he finally convinced them to like, let's go more cyber god than Lawnmower Man, was they were like, oh, you know, he's pitched like what VR is. And they're like, okay, but like, how are you going to do the effects? Like what's going to happen there? And he was like, oh, that's the easy part. I got that. No big deal. And the truth was, he did not have that. And he did not know what he was going to do at the exact moment that happened. I don't know. And you could look at the effects of this movie now, and I'm sure a lot of people would call it laughable. And it's wild to think about, but like the sum total of like 8 minutes of digital effects in The Lawnmower Man, it took like 7 or 8 people, and I think it was like 8 months to complete all of it. I had a budget of like $500,000 at that time, but it was pretty impressive. Nobody'd done that before.
Well, yeah, and on a $10 million movie, like this is a pretty low budget movie. I mean, $10 million for a movie with this much special effects work in it, you know, that's pretty low.
And it's just weird to think about that this is the first, I know we talked about the first person to say virtual reality. This is the first time virtual reality is in a movie, or even mentioned, or even the concept of virtual reality is mentioned in cinema or anything.
In pop culture of any kind, really. Like this is where most people first were introduced to the term of virtual reality, was in The Lawnmower Man. People didn't, it popularized the term virtual reality. I mean, it was, before this, it was only being used like in circles of a bunch of nerds in Silicon Valley, basically.
Yeah. It's just weird to think about when you like just sit out and you're just like
everybody knows what it is
like
now.
yeah. Just virtual reality is just a thing people know.
Yeah.
You know, now
Yeah.
it's just weird to think about this, the first place
This is
that was even a concept.
What a weird way for it to be introduced to people.
Yeah.
too.
I don't, we could argue on if it was the best way for it to be introduced to the world, but here it is.
Yeah. So New Line Cinema ended up purchasing the distribution rights to The Lawnmower Man. This is back when New Line was primarily, they were primarily doing lower budget genre stuff because, they were the house that Freddy built, Nightmare on Elm Street being their first kind of big release. We've talked a lot about the history of New Line, especially in our John Waters series, because they were kind of integral to the release of some of his earlier films. But so this kind of fit like right in their wheelhouse at the time. In the pre-Lord of the Rings world of New Line Cinema, this was kind of right up their alley. They opened the film wide in March of 1992. Now, this film, which was often marketed as Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man, despite having, as we've said, little to no resemblance to the short story, it was actually a huge success for them. It earned more than $30 million in its first 2 weeks of release. And remember, $10 million budget. And then went on to gross $250 million worldwide.
Nice.
That's insane to me.
Yeah,
like,
really great.
It feels like a lot, but I have to think that this movie, there was something about the marketing of this movie that happened. I remember it still to this day. I remember The Lawnmower Man's marketing, or like the trailers for it and stuff. And even as a kid, kid-ish at this
You
time, I guess.
were, yeah. I mean, March. You were what? 10?
Yeah, I guess I would
March
have.
of 1992. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I just remember it kind of creeping me out too, like some of
Yeah.
the imagery and stuff like that. So it's always stuck out in my head as I just remember the Lawnmower Man.
I do too, and I didn't see it at the time. I mean, nobody was taking me to see the Lawnmower Man.
Yeah, same.
In 1992, but I saw it a few years later, probably in like 95, 96, when I was able to go to the video store on my own and start renting things on my own. Is probably around when I saw it, but I definitely saw it like on VHS, I think, a few years after its release. So had you guys seen this before though? Before we you watched it for this, I assume.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I definitely watched it for this, but I think if I did, it was probably around the time high school, probably getting something from the video store. I think there was a period there where my brother and I would go and get some, obscure horror movies just because.
that was kind of what I did. Like I started going to the video store and just renting anything on the horror shelf. And I don't know that this was on the horror shelf or the sci-fi, but it could have been on either,
I
honestly.
I feel like it was on the horror, if I remember right, because I think I did also that.
Like it was marketed as more of like a horror movie, if I remember correctly. Even though
Sounds
it really is more sci-fi than horror, it does definitely have some horror elements, especially towards the end. Well, what did you guys think of it watching it this time?
It felt very TV movie of the week. Like, I wonder if some of that is because this did come out in 95 and here we are in 2025 of just like, did anybody just think to unplug the machine or, something along those lines? But again, like looking at this being the first presentation, the debut of virtual reality to the masses, like that wasn't a thought. And seeing, a pre-Bond Pierce Brosnan was really cool. Jeff Fahey, I think this might be the key role of Jeff Fahey.
It's definitely one of his most significant roles as far as like, I mean, he's billed, alongside Pierce Brosnan, like on the poster, like equal billing on the poster. And I don't know that happens has happened in very many theatrical movies for Jeff Fahey.
Right.
He's usually like relegated to, if it's a big role, probably straight to video. If it's a bigger movie, he's usually more of a supporting role.
Yeah. I mean, I liked it, but I'll stress the word like.
Okay.
I like it.
Well, that's better than I expected from you, Todd, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't expect you to like this movie. It didn't seem like something you'd be into for some reason. But what did you think, Gary? And you had seen it before?
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing it when I was way younger. It's been a long time since I watched it. And so well before the director's cut came out, which is what I watched this time.
And that's what all of us watched this time, the director's cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say I get Todd's point about TV like movie of the week or whatever. I think it just has the quality of it that looked like most, and I know it's not Stephen King technically. It looks like those Stephen King movies from that era of like Stephen King movies. Like it feels like they all end up looking like this, where like they look like Needful Things, and which has the great Ed Harris in it, and but they all just have like there's a look that they have where it like looks like what a sci-fi movie now would look like or something. And I respect that it exists, and I respect Brett Leonard.
Yeah.
I don't think that the movie's that good. I think that it's the director's cut, at least, is long. I think it's too much.
See, I actually disagree with that because it had been at least 20 years probably since the last time I watched this movie. So I can't tell you, I can't give you like an accurate side by side of the two, but the way that the director's cut is composed is you can tell which scenes are cut in because it's a different film quality, because they use, I think they use the original camera negative for like the regular stuff, and then they had a different source for the stuff from the director's cut. So there's a little bit of a shift in quality, so you can tell which scenes are new. And I think that the scenes that are added in the director's cut actually do add a lot to the movie, and I think that's the I think that's the cut that I would probably revisit going forward. It is much longer. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long versus like an hour. It's like over half an hour of additional footage, which is a lot for a director's cut. Usually a director's cut, you're getting like an extra 4 minutes if you're lucky.
Yeah.
This is like significantly longer than the original one. But it didn't feel long to me. And I think the stuff that they added to it actually fleshes it out very well. I think it is stuff that is, I understand why they cut it for pacing reasons, but also at the same time, I think it actually adds a lot to the movie.
I don't think that there was anything per se wrong with the story, or it did make me wonder like what happened in the original version that I would have seen, like what was different exactly. But I don't know. It dragged a little for me. I can't help it. I don't know what it was. Something about it. I was ready for it to be over.
I think
by the time it ended.
I think there's an argument to be made that some of the scenes could come off as maybe a little redundant, and that's probably why they got trimmed. But for me, I don't think it felt as it didn't feel unbearable. Like I wasn't checking my watch or anything.
I felt like
that.
The pacing was pretty good in the director's cut. I actually I knew going in that it was 2 hours and 20 minutes long. And when it got towards the end, I was like, wow, it's almost over already. Like I actually felt like it was paced really well.
I don't know. Maybe it caught me on a bad day. I definitely did not have that feeling.
Yeah,
I did watch it thinking like, I don't know what you would have cut.
Yeah.
Like it all felt like the story needed that stuff.
It's such a strange movie. And I love a movie that like takes a big swing at being weird like this. You know, I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but this time, like and I honestly don't remember. I remember liking it before, but I don't remember details, the specifics. But I had a lot of fun with it this time. I mean, yeah, there's some potentially problematic stuff going on in the early parts of the film with Jeff Fahey's performance. He does break Kurt Lazarus's cardinal rule in his performance, but still, it doesn't like. It's kind of fun to watch him change throughout the movie. This is a movie that starts with a robo monkey going on a killing rampage, and I can't dislike it completely.
Yeah.
I didn't say I disliked it completely.
Yeah.
Like it just
and I think the cyberspace stuff is really great. I mean, the effects are charmingly outdated, I would say. But they're weird. Like I like how weird it gets when they go into cyberspace, especially in the last act of the movie. I mean, the last act of the movie is when they're battling like Job inside of cyberspace, and you get those like long scenes in cyberspace. It's like really bizarre stuff for what I assume they're hoping to be like a mainstream movie, and became a mainstream movie. But it's like, man, like this is some like weird looking shit, and it doesn't look realistic, but it doesn't have to be because it's supposed to be set in a cyber world. It doesn't need to look realistic.
Yeah,
I love
it makes me think of the episode of Community where the Dean gets the VR set. And I mean, Community, of course, is always very pop culture referential.
Yeah.
So I think this was their attempt to shout out Lawnmower Man, and it's very funny.
I just watched Community through, and I was just thinking, I was like, don't they mention Lawnmower Man in that one?
Yeah,
I feel like they do.
But I don't know. There's something about that movie that I kind of, when I sat down to watch it, I kind of expected it to not enjoy it, honestly, or to at least not like love it. And I kind of loved it. Like I watched it and I was like, I would revisit this regularly. I think it's super. Now, granted, I do have an affinity for sci-fi movies of this era, the 90s. Like I love the aesthetic of them. I kind of love the like shitty, everything's shiny and blue aesthetic that all of these movies seem to have. There's something, maybe it's because I grew up watching, that was at a time where I was getting into those kind of movies. So there could be a nostalgia factor there, although I don't really have any nostalgia for this movie in particular, because like I said, I could barely remember what happened, but there's something about how audacious and weird it is that is really fun to me. I mean, it's got very overly pretentious dialogue sometimes, especially anytime that Pierce Brosnan talks. Everything he says, I'm like, who the fuck talks like that? You know, and the plot feels like Flowers for Algernon for the America Online generation. Like, you know, like it feels like that was an intentional almost reference.
Yeah.
But in Flowers for Algernon, it's been a long time since I read that, but I don't remember Charlie trying to like murder everybody.
No, that does not happen.
But,
I
so
love that story, and I love the way that book's written. So I've read that
Yeah.
one a bunch of times actually, but it's and that's definitely what I thought of here.
Yeah.
All I can say with this movie is like I did not hate it. I almost went out of my way to buy the movie beforehand and just watch it that way. And then I was like, how hard do I want to go on this? Do I need commentaries or something? And by the time I finished it, I was just like, I'm good. And
I had the opposite reaction where I watched it on streaming somewhere, and I was actually telling Todd earlier, like after I watched it, I actually went shopping for the Blu-ray because I'm like, I want to own this.
Whereas, spoiler alert, I spent more money on Virtuosity than I have on any 4K so far in my library, and I came away from that one going, well, okay, at least I like it.
Well, you know what? Vinegar Syndrome did an outstanding job on that 4K though. It looks fantastic, and the packaging is cool, and like we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. Well, New Line was pretty thrilled with the film's performance when it came out. As I mentioned, it made $250 million. That's a lot of money for a fairly small investment on their part. They were so thrilled, in fact, that they greenlit a sequel to the movie. The Lawnmower Man 2 Beyond Cyberspace was released in 1996, and it did not feature a single one of the creatives from the first film. So that means no Brett Leonard, no Pierce Brosnan, no Jeff Fahey. Only Austin O'Brien returned. He's the kid. He's the kid.
You can't not mention Mr. Last Action Hero.
Yeah, Austin O'Brien is back here. And Matt Frewer, that is, yes, Max Headroom himself plays Job in the film. It was not well received. I watched it as well. I watched Lawnmower Man 2 because I am committed. And it's not good. It's not it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Granted, my expectations were very, very low. And it's like Matt Frewer plays Job like he's Ace Ventura. Like I don't know what he's doing, but it feels like a 1990s Jim Carrey performance, and I don't think that was on purpose. But it's Austin O'Brien. It's set in the future. It's set 6 years after the first one, but it feels like it's set in like 2040, 2050. I don't know. It's set like way in the future, and where it feels like it is because the cars are all like really futuristic. The outside sets are all futuristic. It kind of feels like they reuse the set of like Trancers or something. And Austin O'Brien's character is now a hacker who lives underground in the like subway tunnels of this dystopian world with a bunch of other teenage hackers. So it's sort of like the Goonies in cyberspace. The movie it's very weird. It's a very weird way to follow up this movie. And they kind of explain that Job looks different because he was sort of like dead at the end of the first one, but they pull him out of the rubble. He's lost his legs, by the way, and they have to reconstruct his face. This is all in the cold open of the movie, which I guess explains why he looks like Matt Frewer. Although when Austin O'Brien first sees him in the movie, he immediately knows that it's Job. So that doesn't make any sense. But I can't recommend. If we were doing a further viewing for this one, I would probably say watch this because it's like stupid fun, you know.
Yeah.
It's not boring. It's not that's number one. It's not boring, but it's also not good. I looked it up on Letterboxd and it has a 1.9, I think, on there, and I wouldn't go that low. I'd give it a 2.5 to 3, just for sheer, you know. I don't think there's anything wrong with a 3-star movie. I enjoy 3-star movies. I think it's stupid and fun, and I wasn't bored by it. So that's all I can say. Very dumb though. And I don't think it did that well either at the box office.
Yeah, I remember again that exists, but I don't think I've ever seen that.
I don't think I had ever seen it before this.
Definitely remember the trailer because it's it's a mile a minute with crazy stuff in it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, one person who was less enthusiastic about the Lawnmower Man's success was Stephen King. In fact, he filed a lawsuit against New Line, claiming that the film bore no meaningful resemblance to his short story, and insisted that his name be removed from the advertisements and the film's credits. And King did end up winning the lawsuit, and he reached a $2.5 million settlement with the studio.
New Line snatched up Lawnmower Man and did what studios do best. They lied like a sweaty late night televangelist. They slapped Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man on every piece of marketing as though it were an actual adaptation. And it was really as close to Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man as like Fast and Furious is to Sense and Sensibility. Like it is not at all the same
Not
thing.
even close. And like when this happened, a lot of the prints were already out, so they were having to, deal with that because some of the prints, they still had Stephen King's name on it based on the short story by Stephen King. And I don't have all the details in front of me, but basically, like before they reached the settlement, New Line appealed, and then they were told by a judge that if they didn't like take his name off of everything, they were going to be fined $10,000 a day for every day that they didn't comply. So they figured it out real quick after that. Yeah. They're like, all right, I think we got a solution. So now his name is nowhere on it. But they're still, you can still find scans of posters out there that say Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man on them. They were already out in the wild at that point, but they had to basically take his name off of all the TV ads, all the prints, and everything.
I wonder if there's any of the original film prints still floating around out there.
Oh, I doubt they all got like thrown into a fire or anything. I'm sure they still exist. I'm sure there's a few floating around.
I was gonna say that's listeners, you know what to get Justin for Christmas.
Yeah. If you have a priceless 35 millimeter print of The Lawnmower Man that still has Stephen King's credit on it, then send it my way. I'll take it. I don't have any way to watch it.
Right.
It's just it's so weird that you even try. I mean, I get why you want his name on it, but again, it's about like a fucking the guy sacrifices shit to pan, and there's no like
nothing
VR
at all.
or cyberspace.
No,
or
there's
no,
and that's the whole plot of the movie is about VR and cyberspace. Like literally
no shirtless Pierce Brosnan screaming about neural pathways anywhere in there. So
the only thing that resembles a Stephen King short story in this is the existence of a guy who cuts grass, and also, and I haven't read the story in a long time, but the abusive priest, I don't know if he's in the short story, but he definitely feels like a Stephen King character. Like
that's true. Yeah,
evil priests and evil preachers are kind of a staple of Stephen
that's
King.
Definitely his thing.
Yeah.
So I will say this though, Brett Leonard gets sued by, not him directly, but gets sued by Stephen King and then still wins the box office. That's some boss shit right there.
Well, yeah, I mean, New Line got sued. Brett Leonard didn't. It was New Line. Well, it was actually Allied's idea to use the Stephen King short story, and it was New Line's idea to make sure that we slap Stephen King's name on everything, not Brett Leonard's. So we can't really fault him for that. So none of this this fallout from this with Stephen King really had much of an effect on Leonard, at least on his career. The financial success of the film, I mean, it effectively launched his career. I mean, he had done, the low budget zombie movie before this, but like this was a big deal. This was a blockbuster. This was a big hit.
Well, I did want to mention that, like, I mean, there are like 3 video games based on the movie, and there's like, did you see when that like recent David Koresh documentary that they did? They found that like this was one of David Koresh's favorite movies.
No shit, really?
Like they took it up.
So
wow,
weird.
I feel like there's a lot to unpack there.
He thought he had powers similar to Job.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Fun side note too, before you go on, is that Jaron Lanier, the VR god himself, hated this movie.
Yeah. It doesn't exactly
gave...
paint like virtual reality in a great light. It's not like this is going to change the world. It's like, no, this could like end the world. This thing's terrible.
Yeah. He said it gave VR a bad reputation and that it, quote, looked like digital LSD.
It does. That's what I love about it.
This was in Wired magazine, and he also apparently like threatened legal action for the use of his name and ideas.
Really? I mean, his name in the film? Do they mention him?
I don't remember his name being in there, but maybe just his name getting tossed around in discussion. I have no idea.
Interesting.
That was one of the things I saw.
Well, right after The Lawnmower Man, Brett Leonard directed an all CGI music video for Peter Gabriel's "Kiss That Frog." Remember that one? I didn't.
I do not.
I did not. But I did watch this video. It's weird.
Leonard says, what I was going to say earlier that I forgot to say too is that Leonard, you were mentioning the Stephen King thing. He did not care either. He said he understood the Stephen King thing.
Oh yeah,
I saw some interviews with him where he was like, I would feel the same way.
Yeah,
because I wasn't doing The Lawnmower Man. Yeah, he said basically this movie launches him to become in one interview he called it studio fodder. So it's like just whatever we need to do. But yeah, he gets handed Peter Gabriel's "Kiss That Frog," and if you haven't seen that video, you should
look it up.
Suffer through it. And,
yeah, look it up. It's something else.
He said, "Let's make an entire CGI thing. Pete, you're going to be a frog. There's going to be digital sex. It's going to play in 4D theme park domes." And that's not a joke, by the way. That it was released at like Disney World's Sensorium Dome.
Was it really?
Yeah. And people like were getting motion sick from watching this frog seduce them. And it was I don't know. He didn't just dabble in VR. This guy wanted to fuck reality right in front of a lot of people.
It's a weird video. I'll try to throw it up on our Substack or something. It's a fun little corner of Brett Leonard's career, I would say. but it put him in touch with Peter Gabriel, which, believe it or not, is part of the story of Virtuosity.
Oh.
So, as we'll get to. And soon after that, he returned to the big screen with a horror thriller called Hideaway. Now, I had never heard of this movie at all. I did not know of its existence. I kind of want to watch it now.
I started to watch it this morning and I didn't finish it.
I might try to fire it up sometime this week. But it's based on a Dean Koontz novel. All right, good start. We went from Stephen King to Stephen King's like a bizarro world doppelganger, Dean Koontz. And it has a script co-written by frequent David Fincher collaborator Andrew Kevin Walker, who we've talked about a lot on the show. Yeah. And it stars Jeff Goldblum, Alicia Silverstone, the same year as Clueless, Jeremy Sisto, which love that guy. What happened to him? And Alfred Molina.
Wow.
Yeah. Hideaway, see, like on paper should slap. But in execution, for what I saw, I don't know. It's like it feels like from the bit I got to do, it was like if Flatliners got blackout drunk with Spawn and threw up Jeff Goldblum and put it on film.
It was Gary, say no more.
It was like, sold. What if it looks like what if hell was a screensaver for Windows 95?
Yeah.
That's
exactly
called Doom. What it is.
That's the video game Doom.
Right. And Alicia Silverstone, like I don't know, it's so weird. It's like she was like bouncing back and forth from a Clueless audition to like Hellraiser or something. Yeah. And so
that's honestly you're overselling it, Gary.
I was gonna say, stop drilling, you've struck oil.
Supposedly critics hated it, audiences did not care. Even Coots and like a sci-fi magazine I saw a clip from was like, who asked for this?
Has a good movie based on a Dean Koontz novel ever been made? I mean, Phantoms, you think you could argue.
Oh, yeah.
But and I wouldn't call Phantoms great.
I saw Odd Thomas with the guy who died from Star Trek.
Anton Yelkin.
Yelkin, yeah. And I thought that one was okay.
Is that based on Dean Koontz?
Isn't that Koontz? I think
I don't know. I mean, I believe you. I know it's based on a book because I remember seeing it at the bookstore a couple weeks ago. Actually, it might have been Dean Koontz.
It is Dean Koontz. Yeah.
I have not seen that movie though. So, well, Hideaway, like Gary said, it did not impress critics at the time. It was mostly notable for its FX-filled visions of the afterlife. And it didn't make much impact on release with audiences either when it was released in 1995. It was released early that year, I think February or March. But thankfully, Leonard had another film in the works, one that was closer in style and content to his earlier success, which would be released just 5 months later. And that film was Virtuosity.
We should do an episode about Virtuosity.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I so what? So what if Hideaway was a bomb? It didn't matter. Here's the thing. Leonard already had the backup in the chamber.
That's
Big
right.
guns returning to the VR hellscape. Denzel too good for this Washington and pre-gladiator Russell Crowe chewing scenery like it owes him money. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, so it helps that if you've already got another movie in the works before your current movie bombs. Like you've already got the next job. As long as the next one does okay, we're going to be good. Will the next one do okay?
Who's to say?
You'll find out. So in our next episode, we'll actually talk about virtuosity. Well, so like I said earlier, while we were working on this one, it felt like Leonard's background in virtual reality, hanging out with Jaron Lanier and all those guys, and thus his work on The Lawnmower Man was so integral to the story of virtuosity that we couldn't just skip over it. Plus it gave me an excuse to rewatch Lawnmower Man to make these guys watch Lawnmower Man, which I think was pretty fun. Well, in our next episode, we will dig further into how Leonard's previous work led into and influenced virtuosity. We're going to get into the whole story of how that film got made. But for now, we're going to leave you for another week.
So to recap, Brett Leonard gets sued by Stephen King, makes $1 million, traumatizes theme park children with horny frogs, traumatizes Jeff Goldblum with AOL hell, and then 5 months later, he kicks the door open with Virtuosity, a film where Russell Crowe will play a sexy murder algorithm in a purple zoot suit. Next week, if you don't want to just enter the 90s, but mainline them, you'll be back. Just remember, we're talking about Brett Leonard, the cyberpunk genius.
That's right.
Cyberpunk Jesus, preaching the gospel of AI before your grandma even had dial-up. He's pretty fucking wild.
It's going to be good. It's going to be fun. But for now, you guys want to let our listeners know where you can be found on the internet?
I am at This Is Gary Horde, all spelled out.
I am at Mr. Todd A. Davis.
And I am at Justin_Bishop. The show is at cinema_shock on most of the social media things or at cinemashock.net. There you can find links to our merch, links to our Discord, links to Cinema Shock Plus, where you can get the extended version of this and all of our episodes. All of our episodes going back to David Lynch, because before that we weren't doing them. But that's still a lot. That's still a lot of stuff. Yeah. And everything going forward. So lots of good shit on Cinema Shock Plus. You also get discounts on merch. I don't think we have any Cyberpunk merch up yet, but we might by the end of the series once we think of something stupid to put on a t-shirt. I'm sure Todd will have plenty of ideas.
Something's got to come up in this discussion, surely.
But until next time. Oh, and also, if you're a fan of this show, if you're a fan of Cyberpunk, if you're a fan of 90s sci-fi cinema, if you're a fan of The Lawnmower Man, Stephen King, or Virtuosity, share this with all your friends. Leave us a review on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. That's always great. It helps us get up in the charts, but also just tell somebody, anybody who might enjoy this, say, hey, go listen to the show. These guys are cool. Yeah, even if you don't mean it. just do it anyway. And until next time,
may the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.
The keys are mine. I am Johnny here.